Supply Chain Management by Blair, Carter, and Ty. The background of supply chain management. Supply chain management is a flow of goods and services from origin to point of consumption. Basically, supply chain management starts with where we're getting the product from to all the way down to the consumer and how he's using it and everything in between. Supply chain management has existed for forever, but the term was really popularized in the 80s. Supply chain management creates maximum efficiency in the production and distribution of goods. This is so that everyone gets the best bang for their buck and they're the most efficient in everything they do. Plan, source, execute, deliver, and return. This is the most basic plan of supply chain management. Supply chain management, so it starts with the plan. What is your plan of attack? How are you going to get the job done? What are you going to do to make money? Source, where are you getting the product? What is the product? How are you going to get the product to you? Execute, putting that plan into action. That is who's the consumer is, how much you're selling it for, what the product is. Deliver is getting that product from your source to your warehouse or your yard or wherever it is to the customer in a timely fashion. And return is what product you still have and why do you have it? Is it busted? What's wrong with it? And how are you going to sell it? Fred's view on supply chain management: efficient fulfillment, make the customer happy, however you can get the customer happy, make it happy, make them happy, and make it happen in a fast manner. Flexibility, adapt and overcome in the changing economy, making sure that you're very flexible so that the customer is always happy with you. It is a very customer-based, and so if you have a happy customer, he's gonna come back and he's gonna want to spend more money with you. And if you don't have a happy customer, it's hard to have him come back. Relations, make people happy, make your customer happy. It's all about customer service. Make friends and do business with them continuously. If you have continuous business, that's when you have a company. Customization, customer focus, meet the customer's needs. If you don't have a customer, you don't have a job. Like I was saying earlier, it's all about customer service and making sure that your customers are happy, because that's how you get them to come back and spend more and more money with you. Sustainability, can you keep the right things on your shelves and have them where you need them in a timely fashion? Can you get them to your customers in a timely manner? You need to do this in order to be successful in the supply chain management field.
Statistics on supply chain management. It's a growing field, and every single day 48 million pounds of freight or cargo are moved in the U.S. and it values at $48 billion a day. And supply chain management, logistics, transport currently employs 6 million people in the U.S. alone, and it's a $1.3 trillion industry every year. And there's 1.4 million jobs available in supply chain management, and that number is growing every day. There's a huge number of possible career paths within supply chain management. There's planning and forecasting. Planning deals with making the actual plan that goes into effect within the supply chain, and forecasting is predicting what's going to go on, what kind of activities are going to happen, what could possibly happen within your supply chain. Purchasing and procurement are essentially the same thing. It's buying raw goods, buying unfinished products, buying inventory, buying warehousing, transporting. Fred's company, that's Carter's dad, the guy we interviewed for our project, he's talking about all the trucks they own for his company, Capital Building Supply, and they need to have all these trucks do all of this different kind of, like, lifting the drywall up into third floors of buildings and things like that, so that not only it's easier for them to deliver their good, but it's also easier for them to make the customer happy by doing more on their end. Logistics is it's kind of what goes on behind the scenes. Like, it's everything from the physical transportation, but it's also all the things that go into it, all of the costing and things like that go into the transportation, aside from just the trucking of things from place to place and the railing of things from place to place. Operations is everything. It's literally every single step of the process that goes into a supply chain management. And then inventory management is obvious. It's involves warehousing, transport, and all distribution too, honestly, and it encompasses a lot of the other things on this list. Inventory management is just keeping track of your inventory. There's a thing in Fred's business that he said it's called odd lot. When something sits on the shelf for more than a year, you have to write it off, and it costs you a lot of money. And when you have a good inventory manager, you don't have that. You keep things from basically going stale. He's in his business specifically. There's fire stop drywall, which once it goes for a certain time without being purchased, you can't use it anymore, and that essentially means that you have to get it off the shelves as fast as possible, and that's really, really important for inventory management. And within inventory management, warehousing, you have to have the right layout for your warehouse. You want to keep the things you use the most up front, the things you use the least in the back. So the things you use the least don't get damaged, because again, Fred, he is the specialty products manager, and the thing that you make the most products, or the highest margins on, are the things that you sell the least of. The specialty products are where you have your highest profit margins, and that's why you want to take good care of those products. Distribution is obvious. It's getting the things out of your warehouse, out of your yards, and getting them to where they need to go. And then customer service, again, it's a customer service based business. You want your customer to be happy. You want to have a good relationship with your customer. It's all about customer service. If you don't have good relationships with supply chain management, you're not going to have a job. Then some more stuff about Fred, because we haven't really talked about him that much yet, is that he went to college at Shepherd. He graduated in 1988. After college, he went to work at Xerox for 7 years, and then he went on from there to be a sales trainer for 7 more years. He started his own business, which was Graphic Communications Group, for 10 years, and then that split into, what was it called, Carter?
Marketing Concepts.
It was split into Marketing Concepts, and currently he's working at Capital Building Supply, and he's been there for 5 years, and he's a marketing and specialty products manager. And to him, supply chain management is super important, and he talked about it a lot with us in his interview. And he had a lot of really interesting insight. The education necessary to work in supply chain management is kind of interesting, because to do an entry-level job, you need an associate's degree at the very least, depending on who you're working for, but a bachelor's degree is typically preferred. And then you usually need an internship or some kind of relevant work experience. It doesn't necessarily have to be a supply chain management-based job that you worked in the past, but it needs to be something in probably that particular business or in business in general. Then your second position it'll usually be like a supply chain analyst, is what a lot of career tracks had listed, and they want you to have your bachelor's and some supply chain management experience aside from just work experience in general. And then a manager, they want you to have an advanced degree, a master's degree, and that's when you're at the pinnacle. You're that holy grail, the supply chain manager. You're at the very top of your game. You're ahead of everybody else on the supply chain management team. And then at the very top is the executive, the COO, the vice president. That's the guy that the supply chain manager answers to. They're like the head of operations, and they usually have a ton of experience. They make the most money. They have the most sway, and those guys are the ones that are taking executive strategies and turning them into supply chain functions. So I looked at personality types for supply chain management, and ENFP, which was my personality type, worked really, really well. But one thing that was pretty consistent was that extroversion and intuition were kind of necessary, but in totally different ways. In ENFP, extroversion is pretty universal. It's really hard to work in a business that's based around relationships if you're an introvert. You have to be able to talk to people, you have to be able to build relationships and put yourself out there in order to make a successful company, and an introvert I just don't think was capable of doing that job. And then intuition is different for an ENFP as it is for an ENTJ, because intuition for an ENFP is they have that gut feeling, and that's super important, because sometimes when there's not a logical answer and you I talked about something in my research paper that discussed it's a multi-process. It's like a multi-process strategy, and you don't necessarily have time to go through the whole multi-process strategy when you're thinking of something that you want to do. Perception is just the way you look at things, and that's important because you need to be able to read situations really well. And ENTJ, extroversion, intuition, thinking, and judgment, they tend to be a little bit less sensitive about the way that people feel. I talked about that in my paper too, but they tend to think really quickly on their feet, and they very, very instinctively make like knowledgeable decisions off the top of their head, which is really important. Number one trait for supply chain management was customer focus. It's all about the customer. If you bend over backwards for them, they will come back. If you do not have a customer, you do not have a job. If you don't have a product, you can't get customers. It's all about the customer. Who's hiring? It's pretty much, supply chain management is a growing field. It's universal. Everybody has them. Carter, in his library assignment, I talked about it in the paper, had an ad for the CIA who needed a logistics officer. There's supply chain management companies who do just supply chain management. Apple has supply chain managers. Northrop Grumman has supply chain managers. Everybody has them. There's all kinds of jobs. There's analysts, managers, logistics, planners. Every single different possible facet we talked about earlier, there's jobs available for those everywhere. There's 1.4 million available jobs right now in supply chain management. And that's pretty much all we have for you guys. We appreciate your time. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation on supply chain management. That's it. Thank you.